Can a nobody become a cloud engineer in 6 months? Yes. All right. Next. I mean, legitimately, you can absolutely become a cloud engineer pretty quick. Cloud is an emerging area, so it's an area where there's a lot of opportunity. Um, typically, what I tell people when they are learning, when they're trying to get into cybersecurity, when you're trying to get in IT, cloud is a great area. I think everybody should learn some about cloud. You should get somewhat familiar, at least with one of the cloud vendors. I typically recommend people go towards AWS unless there's a specific reason, like your employer, is using Google or Microsoft or whatever. But 6 months is going to be 6 months is going to be tight, right? Because when I think about the certifications that you get, so like let's take AWS for instance, right? You have the CCP, which is a certified cloud practitioner. Then you have, depending on what area you go for cybersecurity, I typically recommend the architect path. So before you start getting into the security specialty, but so like the architect associate, and they have the other associate level ones too. But the CCP, I think you can pass within a month or two. The associate level, you're probably looking at maybe 2 to 3 months. Typically, I tell people around 2 to 3 months for a lot of certifications. That's pretty reasonable if you're putting enough time in. But with that being said, you need some underlying foundation before that stuff, right? So I would tell you getting a networking certification before you get cloud certifications is important. So that's another couple months probably. So I think 6 months is pretty aggressive uh, because cloud it's being able to do a lot of that other stuff, right? It's knowing about the operating systems, it's knowing about some of the networking stuff, and it's putting it into the cloud. It's not like cloud is a very isolated thing. You still have to know how some of that other stuff operates. And you have to have some of that knowledge because you're not going to necessarily get that knowledge in some of the cloud certification studies. And so I think 6 months is pretty aggressive. I think that 9 months is probably doable. A year is probably conservative, probably more realistic because, especially if you have no experience, it's going to be hard to get into a cloud engineer kind of job and get somebody to trust you with their cloud infrastructure. It's just how it is, right? You have to prove yourself and show that you know what you're doing. But possible, but from zero, it's probably not likely. I would say at least probably 9 months, probably a year is more realistic. But cloud's a great area to go into. It's um, super popular and it's emerging, and there's still not a lot of cloud expertise out there. So especially when you come to cybersecurity, it's it's definitely a good area to look into.